Well, welcome back everyone to another video here on my Tideline Fishing YouTube channel. And if any of you out there have wanted to get into beach fishing here in the UK, this is a perfect video for you. So over the course of this video, I'm going to run through pretty much everything you need to know to get started. I'm going to include things like the right rod and reel to pick, the right venues, the right rigs, bait, and also reading tides, because that's a massive part in fishing, especially, well, in sea fishing that is. So I've got my first two rods out there five minutes ago. So what I'm going to do now is fish these out for another 5, maybe 10 minutes to see if we can pick off a bite on our first cast. And then I'll reel one in, and then we'll get straight into the video. We're starting with the right rod and reel to pick. So I hope you enjoyed the video, everyone, and let's get into it. Right everyone, so first thing we're going to go into now is picking the right rod and reel for your fishing. So if you have done any research into rods and reels for beach fishing here in the UK, you would have noticed that the market is very, very busy with different price ranges, different lengths, different thicknesses, different brands, different ranges, and it can get a bit, and even with the names, some of them can be a bit misleading. So same with the reel as well. Some of them can be, it can be quite misleading, and it can be quite confusing to know what rod and reel to pick to suit your style of fishing best. So first thing we get into is the rod. So the rods I'm using today are the Tronix Pro Xenon C6 LDs. They're a 13-foot 2 rod with a casting rate of 4 to 8 ounce, which is generally perfect for pretty much any beach fishing you're going to do in the UK. And they are 2-piece, so you got a spigot by here, it's called, where the rods connect. So the tip section slides into the butt section. And this rod comes with an adjustable reel seat. So the part here, this thing here, that's called a reel seat. And if I take the reel off, it loosens it, and it can slide anywhere between the butt of the rod to the top of the shrink wrap here. Now these rods are designed more so for multipliers, but they can be used with fixed balls as well. And there's another rod in the range, another one of the Xenon rods that is primarily designed and set up for fixed balls. So the reel seat is fixed in a position, and the eyes, there's less eyes and bigger eyes, which help for casting, which I'll go into talk about now. But I'm not going to go into crazy detail because I don't think I need to, because you don't really need to know the tiny little details as a beginner. That comes as time goes on. So these rods, like I said, they're multiplier and fixed ball. I'm using them specifically because I swap between the two. You just see in my fishing that I use a lot of multipliers and fixed balls as well. So it's a perfect rod for me. I can swap it from high reel or low reel. And also with rods, don't pick a stiff rod. You'd see a lot of people these days saying that stiff rods are the best rods because they catch you big fish, they cast far. It's a load of rubbish. You can cast a very long way with a very light rod if set up properly. So this rod is very soft compared to the normal rods I'm using, say for example my Tronix Competition Rock 247s, but I can cast almost just as far, I'd say. And another reason why you don't want to go light, you don't want to go too heavy, as a beginner, you're going to naturally, same with anything, you're going to struggle casting. So the stiffer the rod, the harder it is to load up the rod to cast further. So a soft rod, you're going to cast easier, you're going to cast further, it's going to be an easier user experience and a more fun experience, because you're going to see the bites a lot more, you're going to feel the fish fighting a lot more. It's just generally a lot more of a fun experience. So these rods are a perfect rod for that, because they've got a nice soft tip, so you can see the bites really well, feel the fish fight back really good. It's a nice experience rod to use. So these rods retail for around £280 to £300, which is too high for a complete beginner. But Tronix do have a range of rods called the Gorilla rods. Now they retail for about £100 each, and they are absolutely amazing. I have actually used them myself. I used a prototype, the 3-piece. I can't remember which one exactly it was. And I was given that rod to have a go with, and I used it for a bit, and I was asked how much do I honestly think it retail for, and I said in the £200 price range, maybe a bit lower. And they said, well, it's actually going to be retail for £100, so I was quite shocked at that. So the Gorilla rods are phenomenal, and there's a massive range of them to suit different types of fishing. The names are quite well suited for each. Like there's a flatty rod, there's a bass rod, a general beach one, I think there's a match one. So yeah, it's quite a nice range of rods to pick through. So next thing going on to now is the reels. Right, so the reels. So there's two different types of reels that are used for beach fishing, and that is a fixed ball reel that I'm using today and a multiplier reel. Now, as a beginner in fishing, I would very strongly suggest you to just put multiplier reels to the side, forget they even exist, as they're going to cause you a lot of stress on the beach from cracking off, bird's nests, and you're not really going to enjoy the experience so much. Whereas a fixed ball, they're very easy to use, and you can't really go wrong. They're just generally a perfect reel to get going with, and then you can revisit the multipliers once you've got more experience in casting and just general fishing. So the reels I'm using today are the Xenon, or the Tronix Xenon C6 8000s, and they are a long cast fixed ball. So some fixed balls will be designed for heavier work or boat fishing where casting is not an issue, so they'd be designed for heavy spinning. Say, for example, a brand called Penn, I'm sure you've heard of it, it's one of the biggest brands going really, and they do a reel called the Spin Fisher. So there's just the standard Spin Fisher that's designed for more bigger game fishing, I suppose you could say. So it's a saltwater fixed ball, it's got really deep, short, fat spool, and it's designed for just heavier line, really fast retrieve, not really designed for casting, and it's designed for the bigger stuff. But then they also make a Spin Fisher long cast, or it's sold as a Spin Fisher LC, so the LC stands for long cast, and that is a spool that is slightly taller. Sometimes, like these spools here, they're quite wide and they're slightly tapered, but the Penn Spin Fisher long cast spools are a bit more tapered, a bit more noticeably tapered. But there's a reason for that. So as you cast, if the top of the spool is narrower than the bottom, the line's going to come off a lot smoother, because it's not going to catch the rest of the line as it comes off the reel. And there's another reason for a long cast reel being the reason why it's such a high advantage. And even, for example, these reels are more on your budget side, I suppose you could say. They retail for about 80 to 90 pounds, something like that, which is, I think, cheap for the reel myself. I've been using them for quite a long time now, and they are brilliant fixed balls for the money. So there's so as you turn the handle, the reel will go up and down, which will actually lay the line on the spool, and that is called the oscillation. So the slower the oscillation, the neater the line lay. So it's going to be hard to see. I'm going to have to reel this lead right the way up, but you can see the spool is sat more towards the bottom. As I turn the handle, it's dropping, and then it starts lifting back up again, and it's actually doing that really slow. So the slower the oscillation, the neater the line lay, and the easier you're going to be able to cast, and then that obviously leads to a longer cast. So that pretty much covers it all really, and size of fixed balls really matches a rod. I mean, these are the 8000 reels. Generally speaking, a long cast reel, or like these bigger fixed balls designed for the beach, anywhere between sort of like a 6000 and upwards is perfectly suited. So then next thing to talk about is line, and then we're going to go on to some rigs then. So the line that is going to be the best pick for the reel to be able to cast further than what you would if you picked the wrong stuff. Right, so what line is best to put on your reel? So the easiest rule of thumb is the lighter the line, the further you're going to cast, because it's going to go through the eyes a lot easier if it's thinner. So on these fixed balls, I've got 15-pound orange main line, and I would highly advise to get a brightly coloured main line, because you're going to see a lot better. If you cast over your other rod or tangle, you can see a lot clearly, and when you're reeling a fish in, you can see it, and it's just easier to use. So the main line is what fills the reel, and then you need a shock leader to take the shock of the cast, because if I was to tie my 6-ounce weight onto 15-pound main line, I'm just going to snap it in the cast. So you need a shock leader to absorb the pressure, and there's two different types of leaders. So you've got a standard shock leader, so like this stuff, the Xenon shock leader. And the best way to know how to know what thickness and strength, every ounce of lead you need 10-pound of line for. So I've got 60-pound line to suit a 6-ounce lead. So that's just your main sort of traditional shock leader. And then for fixed bulls, I would advise you to use a tapered shock leader. Now these ones are the Tronix Xenon tapered shock leaders. They're clear, but they also do some orange ones, which I probably would advise you to use a bit more. Now these are 5, and there's 5 on a roll, and they are 15 meters long, and they start at £26 and finish at 80. And there's also ones that drop down to 60. I think there's a 70 actually as well, and there's a 50 and a 40. So they do them to suit all different strengths. And you tie the thin end to your main line, and then the thick end to your clip that you attach your rig with. And they are tapered, so there's no, so they start thin and they gradually taper up to the thicker end. And then that is purely for the fact is your knot is very small, so it helps casting that bit more again. And if there's weed in the water, it's brilliant, because when you reel in, the weed slides down your line and goes with your knot easier. And then it just ends up at your rig to take off, which is easy than getting stuck on a big ball on your knot. I'm not going to go into knots. I have done a video on knots on its own, more of a in-depth talk about how to tie the knots, which I advise you to watch, because that is quite a big thing in fishing, is your knots. So I'll put a picture of the thumbnail up here in the title of the video. I'd recommend to give that a watch. And the one I would use for, I say it on the video, but use the double uni knot for the tapered shock leader. And just pick up some tapered shock leaders. You'll be glad you did. I will say they are brilliant. So light lines, £10 shock leader for every ounce of lead. So I'd say to start off with a 5 ounce lead, so use 50, or you could go to £60 leader. It covers you for that bit more if you want to. So yeah, that covers the line. The next thing is rigs, and what rigs to attach onto your main line or to your shock leader to bait up, to cast out there to catch you a fish. Right, so you've got your rod and reel set, you've got your nice thin line on, you've got a tapered leader tied on, you're ready for your rig. So you might have asked people, your local tackle shops, or put a question on some of the Facebook groups of what rigs is best for a beginner, or you might have watched videos, any of my past videos or any other people's videos on YouTube, and you may have had a ridiculous volume of names thrown at you, like pulleys, upper novas, pulley droppers, 2-hook flappers, 3-hook flappers, 2-hook clip downs, 3-hook clip downs, loop rigs, wishbone rigs, pop-ups, everything. So you might get a bit confused. So what I'm going to do is show you 2 rigs, and 2 rigs only, that is going to get you going. So I'm going to show you firstly a pulley rig, then I'm going to show you a 3-hook flapper. So a 3-hook flapper is going to be designed for your multiple species and smaller species, although you will catch big fish on it. And then the pulley rig is designed for the bigger fish, like your rays, smoothhounds, bass, eels, that kind of thing. So the first thing though, before we get into rigs, is the leads, because that's quite an important thing to know as a beginner. So let's give a quick mention about leads. Right, so there's 2 different types of leads, or weights, as I should say. There is, without getting tangled like I have done, is a plain lead and a grip lead. So as you can see, this one here, the plain lead, is nothing on it, just the eye at the top that I've attached my clip to, and that is about it. So a plain lead is good in situations where there's no tide, or if there's a tiny bit of tide but feature, the lead will roll around naturally, find a little gully to sit into. But generally speaking, and casting, you want, if you're going to just stand there and cast for a while to learn how to cast, just chuck a plain lead on. And then the other one, a grip lead. So looking at it, you just got massive spikes sticking out of it. It's not a weapon. It looks like a weapon, I will say, and it's not for snagging fish. That is when you cast out, hits the seabed, those spikes, or grippers as they're called, will dig into the seabed and hold it stationary. So like at the minute, I've got quite a strong flow of tide running right to left, and then if I cast a plain lead out there, it's just going to trumble all the way down tide, and it's just going to end up quite close in, or it's going to go over other people's lines next to me, and it's not going to fish effectively. But a grip lead, I'll cast it out, and given that I've picked the right lead to suit the right tide and distance I'm fishing, will sit in like that and just stay in one spot. And then when it comes to reeling, these wires unclip and just trip down, and then you just clip them back up to recast. So that's your leads. Now let's get on to, firstly, the pulley rig. Right, so the pulley rig is effectively one straight piece of line. It's continuous right from the weight all the way through to the hook. So starting at the weight, you've got what you would call your bait clip. So here I've got a breakaway imp. I would advise you to use a breakaway imp for your rigs. They are really, really effective, easy to use, and they rely on the impact of when your weight hits the surface of the water to release the hook, and also they also work on slack in the line to release. They're just generally, I would show you other types, but in all honesty, it's not really worth it. Just buy yourself a pack of imps. They're sold, I think they're like packs of 10. I'll put a photo of what they look like here in the pack so you can have a quick look. But tying onto your imp is what's called your backbone, so your main sort of length of the rig. So I've used 70-pound line, so use slightly heavier line for your backbone of your rig. So I've done these about, well, the snood with a hook on, I've done them 3 foot. So the backbone needs to be longer, which I'll explain a bit more in a minute. But I've tied that bit of line, so say 3.5 foot. On the other end of that piece of line is a swivel. And then running in between that imp and the swivel is 2 5mm beads and a swivel. And then off of the swivel there that the backbone ties onto is called the snood, or the hook length. So that's a bit of line with your hook on. So that is, I think this one is 60 pound on this rig. Then I've got a 5/0 circle hook with a braided dongle, and then there's just a loop on the bottom. So the 2 different hooks that you can use is a circle hook or a pennel with J hooks. I mean, the J hooks, like you can see there, they're sort of your more old school, traditional method. Circle hooks have become incredibly popular in the UK over the past sort of like 10, 12 years. I think it's been possibly a bit longer. There's still lots of people that use J hooks, and I use them on the odd occasion, but I do use circle hooks a lot more nowadays. But going on to the actual pulley rig. Right, so the actual pulley rig itself, that swivel that runs up and down the backbone, you can see there in between the 2 swivel, in between the 2 beads, is what you connect to your shock leader. And then the dongle loop or the J hook, whichever hook you choose to use, will hook onto the imp like so, and then it's going to hang then like so off of that swivel that runs up on the backbone, and it's going to sit really nice and neat, and when you cast it's going to stay clipped, and it stays really aerodynamic in the cast, which enables you to cast a bit further, especially with a bigger bait, and it keeps the bait nice and close to the lead, and it's going to be nice and smooth to cast. And then when that hits the surface of the water, the imp will flick off the hook. And the good thing with an imp, you're relying on the impact of the water to pop it off, but if it doesn't, for whatever reason, it will also come off with a slack line. So that's a reason why the imps are really brilliant. They're just your go-to without a doubt. And then the pulley rig is called a pulley rig because the pulley system in it. So it's going to be sat like that. So you got your weight with your backbone, and then you got your snood with your hook on there. So when your fish picks that up and you come to reel in, as you pull and the fish pulls back, it's going to pull all the way to where your weight is going to end up being right at the top like that, and then your weight is going to be off the bottom of the seabed and less likely to snag on any rock as you're reeling in. But whereas if it was fixed, your lead's going to trundle along the seabed as you're reeling in your fish, and it's quite a high chance of snagging up. So yeah, that pretty much covers your pulley rig. Oh, I think I had a bite again. I've got to check this rod in a minute because I've had a couple of bites on it over the past sort of 10 minutes. So that's all the pulley rig sorted. So the next thing to talk about now is the flapper, the 3-hook flapper. Right, so the flapper, the 3-hook flapper I should say, is a straight piece of line, as you can see there, with 3 hooks coming off of it. So you've got 3 snoods or 3 hook links, one at the top, one in the middle, and then one at the bottom. So the main construction of the rig starting at the top. So you got your swivel that you attach to your shock leader. That runs down, and as you go down the backbone of the rig, you got, I mean, you can just do it with two, so a 2-hook flapper, but 3 hooks, it's not really going to affect your casting a whole lot more, and it's just going to have your chance of catching a fish because it's just that extra hook. So you got 2 crimps, and in between those 2 crimps is 2 beads and a swivel. As you can see there, that should be fairly easy to see. And then off that swivel comes your snood or hook link, which connects to your hook. And on these I've got size 2 J hooks, and then above that is a bait stop. I've got a small sequin, I think it's like a 10mm sequin, and then a rubber stop that I can slide and adjust. So when you put your bait on, you slide that up to it, and it stops your bait sliding back up and off the hook. So running back down your backbone, so I've hit my secondary, so my middle snood, and then below that I then come to my bottom and third one, and then below that again runs down to a clip to attach your weight. Now this rig, there's very little to say about it because it's so simple, but it's just got 3 hooks on there, 3 smaller hooks. You can bait these up with worm or any different fish baits. You can fish them really close in, or you can fish them at longer range. And then as a beginner, it's probably going to be your most effective rig, and the rig you'll probably end up using pretty much all your fishing, because you'll probably catch most of your fish on it. And hook size, as a beginner, I'd say a size 2 or size 1 is perfect, because you're pretty much going to catch anything that swims. And as a beginner, size of the fish you're going to catch is irrelevant. The main thing that matters is just getting a few bites and getting a few fish on the beach, whether they're dogfish, pin whiting, little tiny whiting or pouting, or even a bigger fish. Now, if you watch a lot of my videos, you would see I use 3 clip downs with size 2 circles, which aren't really that much bigger than those, and I target raise with them, and I've had some really big fish on them. So something to know is, and always remember, you'll always catch a small fish and big fish with a small hook, but with a big hook you'll only catch a big fish. And like I said, as a beginner, the main thing is just getting bites and getting fish on the beach. So a 3-hook flapper is a brilliant rig of choice for you to use. So yeah, that pretty much covers the 3-hook flapper. They're very basic, like I said, there's not much to talk about. And obviously the diameter, sort of strength, and the length of the snood it varies. I mean, as a beginner, just keep it simple. If you are going to make them, if you make them about 16 inches, that will cover pretty much all your fishing. And then I shorten them right down to 10 inches or 8 inches, depending on what I'm doing sometimes, or longer again. But 16 inches, I find, is a really good all-round length for pretty much anything you're going to likely do. So yeah, that's the flapper. So the next thing I want to talk about now is probably picking the right venue. I think we'll go on to next, because that's quite a significant thing for you when you first get on the beach. Right, so picking the right venue for your fishing. So ideally you want clean ground, and when I say clean ground, that means that the area that you're going to be casting your rig onto is clean, so sandy or very, very light shingly rock, so an area where you're not going to get snagged up and lose gear. So like I said, I'm here at the Nap today. So as you can see, at the top of the beach you got the Pebbles, which is a brilliant high water venue because you haven't got to cast far past the pebbles to get onto the sand. So the Nap is generally going to be your best bet in here in South Wales around Barry. It's a really good, easy venue to fish, easy access because there's parking all along the top. There's loads of space for parking. And then you can fish over high, off the top of pebbles, casting on the sand, or you could do what I'm doing today, fishing over low water, where I'm set up on the sand, casting onto more sand. So really easy fishing, a couple of minutes from the car, what more do you want? But if you've got access to a pier, like for example Penarth Pier, there was the Swansea Pier. I mean, generally around the UK there's lots of piers and little jetties to fish off. They're probably better again, especially a pier, because you're already out into the sea, I suppose you could say, so casting isn't always as important. But if you're beach fishing, nice clean sandy beach or like a pier, pebbly, it's a nice easy place to fish. And another way to find a venue, aside from asking your local tackle shops or messaging people, is Google Earth. Now Google Earth is a really good tool. So if I get it up on the screen, So here's a little screen recording. So here we are at the nap. So I am about by here, right where that red dot is. So as you can see, I mean, this only works if the satellite view was done when the sea was out, obviously. But as a coincidence, a lot of the coastline around here is done like that, so it's nice and easy to tell. So as you can see, we're here at the nap in front of the car park here. So walk straight down. Now, obviously, without coming down, you can just see you're going to fish over high, perfect, sand in front, you're good. But then you might also look at Porthcurry and think that's quite a good looking venue, it looks exactly the same over high. But as you go around, you can see all these rocky ledges start to form, and in front, so you're going to be fishing on Porthcurry at the end of the path, which is about by here. So straight in front of you, as you can see, there's no sand. It's all just rocks and ledges. So it's not going to be as clean, you're going to lose a bit more gear opposed to moving back over to the nap. Same, I mean, the old harbour is exactly the same again. Fry's Point, you can see fishing off the sides, anywhere sort of around the either side like there, casting onto sand. So Google Earth is a really good tool for that, for picking different venues, especially around South Wales where we've got really big rise and fall. We've got up to a 15.5 metre rise and fall, so it uncovers and then obviously covers up a lot of beach to be unseen when you pull up. So yeah, there's two useful ways, I should say, of picking the right venue. So seeing as I was on the topic of picking the right venue, what coincides with that really importantly is tide sizes. Now, like I said, here in South Wales we've got a rise and fall of up to 15 metres, which is crazy, and along with the crazy sizes of the rise and fall, you got very strong tides, so that can sort of bring in the health and safety side of things. So what I'd highly advise you to do is go to your local tackle shop and pick up what's called a tide book or a tide table. So here's one I picked up from Halton Road Angling. Now I got a couple of these, so I normally buy one. I'll take a photo of each month, so it shows you month to month of the sizes of each day and the times of the high waters. So what I'll do a lot of time, I'll take a photo of it on my phone and I'll make a folder on my phone on the galleries, and I'll have on each photo is each page. So if I do lose this, I've always got it on my phone, and I'll normally have one in my fishing box and I'll have one at the house. So it's always somewhere to refer to. Because for example, if you're going to fish Penarth, which is under the cliffs, a high water venue as well as low, but if you're going to fish over high, and you got caught out with too big of a tide, you can be in a very dangerous situation, push right up against a cliff, and you often got little rocks falling down off the cliff, and there has been some pretty big rock falls. Or if you're going to fish somewhere like, say for example, Bendrix Rock, that is can be a brilliant high water venue, but if you went on a big tide without realising, it was a huge tide, say a 14.5 to a 15 metre tide, and the wind picked up and the big swells turned up, that can be a very, very dangerous place to be. So I couldn't advise picking one of these up anymore. And there's apps like Tide Times near me. They're good for just times, but for pure sizes of the tide, you really do want to pick up a tide book. So yeah, they're not, most shops charge like Daniel Crumb up in Halton Road Angling, they're only 50p, and 50p can, I mean, it can, a bit of exaggerated way, it can save your life, but it really can, to be honest with you, because tides is extremely dangerous, and the sizes of the tides is a very important thing to suit each venue, because they can bring on the fishing really big, or it can really kill the fishing off. Like today, we've got a really small tide, so I think today it's like a 12 metre tide, which is really small. I'm not really that confident today, but it's not really, catching fish isn't really important for me today. It's more so about the teaching for beginners. So yeah, pick yourself up a tide table book, as that will help you massively in your fishing. And like I said, take a photo, make a photo on your folder on your gallery, keep them all in there, so you've always got it to hand, because most people have their phones on them all the time. And you can, and if you want to plan just a few sessions while you're fishing, like today on my thing, I might go fishing over the next few days. What are the tides? I can have a look, it's in my box, or I can have a look with it being on my phone. So that's a quick thing to mention, as that can be a very important and dangerous thing, the tide. So yeah, next thing now, let's talk about a bit of bait, and just a handful of different types of baits that can that be your best go-tos really to get you going on the beach. Right, so the baits that I highly advise you to use are just a small selection that you can take to pretty much any beach and catch a wide variety of fish on. So the only bait I haven't got with me today that I'd really highly advise you to get is ragworm. And the only reason I haven't got any today is because the heat wave we've had over the past few weeks has really affected the shops, the local tackle shops, being able to get worm, because there's a worm farm down by Port Talbot in South Wales that breeds worm and sells it to the local tackle shops. And with a heat wave we've had, it can really damage them in the sense that it kills all the worm and it stops the local tackle shops getting enough. So worm will catch you, all of your mini species as well as some of the bigger stuff, but it's a very good bait for just general catching fish pretty much anywhere. Worm will catch a fish at pretty much any venue. So the other option is your frozen bait. So before I get into bait, always remember bait quality is so high. So I always have a good quality cooler box and ice packs, especially in the summer. Keeps your bait nice and cool. And if you don't use it up, you can refreeze it. But if it's all defrosted and big mush, you're not going to be able to reuse it again. So the first frozen bait that I'll mention is squid. Now all of my baits that I use are Riot Baits. It's by far my favourite company I've used. So these squid, obviously I'd end up picking up the biggest one I've ever seen in the pack. But these smaller squid are brilliant. If I break one out, there we go. There we go, you got your squid. Now these squid are perfect size. A lot of brands do these size anyway. Squid, something to bear in mind with squid, they will catch any species of fish anywhere in the world. They really well in the sea. Squid is by far, well, put it this way, I will never go fishing without squid. It's always in my cool box. So that is your most important frozen bait to pick up. Now the two others that are very high up there, the mackerel don't look the best because they've been partly defrosted before, but mackerel is a very popular bait. It always has been and always will be. Mackerel across the UK is high in abundance. It's a natural food source for the fish. It's a really good go-to bait. Next up, a fish bait that is up there with squid for me is the sardines. Now Riot Baits do these packs of sardines. There's 4 in a pack. You can see them there. These are absolutely fantastic. I've had some amazing success from larger fish all the way up to really big bags of fish with the sardine. Is amazing bait. And then another one is sand eel. Now sand eel is one of those baits, a lot of people rave about it. I'm going to keep these in the cooler box because they defrost very easily, and once they're defrosted they're no good. So if I keep that close for a minute. Sand eel is a brilliant bait for the summer, especially fishing over sand, because sand eel is a small little bait fish that buries himself in the sand. So ray species will come in and feed on those. So sand eel's a brilliant bait, but in my opinion, it's overhyped. I will say, I would rather, if someone said you can use sardine or sand eel for the rest of your life, you got to pick which one, I'd snatch the sardine 10 times faster than I go for sand eel. And it's generally an all-round good bait. It's very oily, but sand eel can be an effective bait on its day as well, especially if you're in an area which has a lot of sand eel. Like we haven't got a huge amount here in South Wales, so that's part of the reason why. But say if you're at some other part of the country where there's a lot of sand eel in the area, it's probably going to be a best bait to use. So the next bait and the last one for the frozen ones is peeler crab, which is definitely, I will say, not the most cost-effective bait, but a bait that on its day it would be it will outfish pretty much anything. So that primarily is your go-to bait for smoothhounds, the small sharks with no teeth, as most people know them. So smoothhounds love crab. Prawn is also good, but crab is your best by a long shot. Peeler crab will outfish any other bait for smoothhounds on any given day. And if you can pick a fresh, you can. but that's a whole different topic that I'll do a separate video on. And yeah, that pretty much, I mean, crab at the minute, I think it's like £17 a dozen, and you might have them from that sort of size up to about that sort of size. So it's not a cheap bait, but when I can get it, I'll get it as much as I can get it, freeze it down, and I've got it there for when I want it. And like today, I mean, traditionally, I wouldn't use crab on clean ground because you're not really going to get so many crabs. So I'd rather save it for venues where it's snaggy and you got a high chance of more smooth hounds. But nowadays, generally speaking, smooth hounds are caught everywhere, not just the rough ground venue. So it's not a complete waste down here, in all honesty. There's a lot of smooth hounds around here at the moment. So yeah, that covers a bait. Again, it's not a huge variety. You don't need a huge variety, but your main ones as beginner, squid and worm, ragworm, they're your two main ones, and then sardine or mackerel. So there's your 4 baits, and then you can go with sand eel, bit of crab, and you can obviously go with bluey. There's a whole load, but there's a few different baits there to get you going. So I've just reeled in to change my bait, and there's one thing I should show, and that is baiting up. And seeing as we've just talked about bait, I thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to do that. And then we're pretty much at the end of the video. There's one other little thing I wanted to mention and have a chat about, but generally speaking, we're pretty much all done. So I thought I'll do a quick baiting up, and seeing as I said how good squid is as a bait for any species, I figured let's do a squid baiting up. So if I just go in and grab one of these squid, or anything too big, there we go. So what I'd advise you to get is you get yourself a filleting knife, a pair of scissors, elastic cotton. This is the Tronix Pro Baitex. This is in the heavy, and it's a really nice thickness actually. Don't go too thick with elastic because it's very off-putting, I think, with a fish. It's very rough. It doesn't look very neat. And neatly presented baits are going to cast better, sit better in the tide, and they will hook more fish when the fish picks it up because it's a nice aerodynamic shape for the fish to take in. So I'm going to show you baiting up squid on a dongle. Now, the length of the dongle is obviously determined off of the size of bait. So this dongle is about 2 inches. So I'll show you a really easy, quick method. I'm not going to go too complicated like I would do before. And if you do want to see that, I've done loads of videos. My most recent dongle video shows it in a lot of detail. I put the thumbnail at the top for you to see. So you got your squid. I cut the head off and then cut a section the length of my dongle, split that down the center, and then I'll whip on. So that is something I forgot to mention. This is a baiting needle. There's loads of different baiting up tools on the market, but this is a knitting needle or a sewing needle. It's nothing on the fishing market. It's just something I've used for a heck of a long time, and it's just something I've got used to now. So I slide a bit on my needle, and I use the elastic cotton, not too tight but not too loose, and I wrap. So I hold it in my hand and I pinch it with my thumb and index finger to give the tension that is needed. Then I put quite a bit around one end, hook the circle hook through the top of the bait, then I slide it on the other end of the needle, then I lay my dongle against the bait, give that a bit of elastic, and then get the other bit of squid that I strap or that I cut off, put that against the other side of the dongle, give that a strap, and then I go down the length of the bait as well, over the hook, over the other end of the bait to secure it on the dongle. A bit more of a wrap, and that is it. Slide it off, and that's a perfect squid bait. That will catch you just about any species that swims. As long as it can fit it in its mouth, it will catch it. Now, there is the J hooks, but I personally would advise using a circle hook. People say it's overcomplicated for beginners, but in my opinion and what I say, if that's all you know, that's all you know. So if you start off with a circle, why would it be overcomplicated, if that makes sense? I've done stupid amounts of baiting up tutorials in my videos, so I'd advise to just buy yourself a few packs of circles and bit of braided dongle, a bit of dongle braid, and use the circle hooks because they snag up less, which I've talked about. The thumbnail that I put in earlier on, if you watch that video, I explain why they're so effective compared to J hooks in great detail. Something I haven't really got time for. I don't really want to go into it right now because I haven't really got the, it's not that kind of video. So yeah, that is baiting up squid on the dongle for any of our fishy friends. Right, so something I just popped in my head was when I baited up that squid, I do the same way, I use the same way if I'm going to be using, say for example, mackerel or sardine, so I'll fillet it and then I'll get the right length to suit the dongle and strap it on. But like I said, watch the other video, I show in more detail then. And generally, if you've watched any of my videos, you'd see me do it a lot. I always talk about baiting up quite a bit in videos. But one thing I have forgot to mention actually today is the tripod in which you rest your rods on while you're waiting for the bite. So the most popular brand in the UK is Ian Gold's. A few other companies make them. I know Tronix makes them. I think there's Salt to do one. There's quite a large range, but Ian Gold is pretty much your most traditional famous brand. They do them in a few different lengths. I've got the 7-foot tripod. That's probably your best bet, is a 7-foot. So it's got 2 cups at the bottom that your rods sit into, that you can actually adjust the height if you want to bring your rods higher up, and then you got your hooks at the top to put your rods into. They're ones that I bought separately, but any of the ones on the market. I know there's a brand called Spooligan you might have seen. They do all different attachments to go on. They're really good actually. I never used them, but I got a few mates to have them, and they are brilliant products. But one thing with the stand is setting it up right, because you'll see a lot of people it'll fall over in the wind or tide. So for example, now there's no wind, so it's not on my mind. But say for example, I've got a really strong side wind blowing left to right. If I set my stand up how it is now, it's just going to blow over in the wind. So if I just give them some slack. So if I got a really strong side wind, it's just going to highly likely to pull the stand over. So set the stand like so. So I got the wind coming from behind me, and I got the rods facing parallel with the beach. And even when there's not any wind, I will always do that, because when your bites, if I bring the camera closer, you'll see. So if your rods are laying parallel with the beach, you're going to see bites a hell of a lot better. Right, so as you can see, the stand, if I do a little bit more, the stand is facing parallel with thy beach. So my rigs are in that direction now, or slightly more left actually, because there's a bit of tide there. Right, so that stand is now parallel with thy beach. Now, my rigs are in that direction, off to my far left. So as the fish picks it up and pulls, it might be hard for you to see, but my left rod is pulling around nicely, and you can see that from a mile off, that bite. But if my stand was facing in the direction that I'm fishing, I'm not going to get quite the same indication, because the angle that your line's pulling. So with your stand side onto the beach, you're always going to see that tip pull around nicely, and you're going to see a bite a lot more clearly. And if there's tide pulling you, say if there's tide pulling me to the right, from left to right, I'd set my stand up on an angle where my rods are facing with the tide, because if they're facing against the tide and it's strong, it will actually pull your rods over. And then what you also want to do is set your drag where there's tide, and generally always set your drag. Something I forgot to mention, because if a fish picks your bait up without you realising when you're doing something on your phone, and it bolts off like a smooth hound, it will allow you to allow the fish to take line without pulling your rod over. So that's one thing to bear in mind. So that is a quick mention about setting a stand. Right, the last thing I want to do, which I should have done a bit earlier in the video, but it's better late than never, is just a very quick casting tutorial. Just a really quick one, nothing too complicated, because that's kind of very important actually, not kind of important, very important. Right, that's reeled in, so I'm going to unclip my rig and clip my lead on. So that's a clip I use on the end of my shock leader, and as you can see I have a long tag sticking off the clip there. There's a reason behind that. When you come to packing up and you reel the clip in through your eyes to take your reel off, they'll catch on your eyes quite easy, and you got to put your rod down and sort of unclip it from your eyes. But if you leave a tag sticking off past the clip, it almost creates like a weedless effect on lure. It stops the clip from hooking onto the eyes. So there's a little random little tip, but it's actually quite a useful tip. So let's get a bit of casting. Right, so high reel. So I'm right-handed. Right, so it's a really quick basic thing for casting. So I'm right-handed, so I have my right hand holding the reel like so, and then my left hand holds the very butt of the rod. But if I was left-handed, I'd be like that, but I'm not left-handed, so I'm not going to cast like that because I'll look very strange. So with this being an adjustable reel seat, I've got to set the reel position on the right height of the rod. Now that is determined normally off of the length of your arm. So if I slacken that off so I can move, I would hold the reel and then hold the butt of the rod like I'm going to cast, and then bring it to the point where my arm is just about on the reel seat and the butt of the rod is under my armpit, and that is a perfect length to set it. So when you come through with your cast, you're not going to be like too high up or too low where you're not going to be comfortable. And if you have got an adjustable reel seat, a lot of the time I'll get in the right position and I'll put some electrical tape around the top just to pin it in place, so when I take the reel off I don't have to set that distance every single time. So to get the right distance now, so you want the drop from your lead to the rod tip, say 4 foot. Let's go about 4 foot. Let's start with that. And you can change it then once you start being more comfortable to put with a swing. I'm not going to show swinging a lead, I'm just going to show very basic overhead cast. So what you want to then do, once you've got the right distance from the tip to the lead, is get the knuckle of the reel, which is that there, which has got the roller where the line comes through. You want that facing the rod. Use your index finger to pull that line down to the rod. Flip the bail arm. So this is the bail arm. Flip that over. But first things first, to bear in mind before you go into actually casting, is foot stance, which is a massively important thing. So I'm right-handed, so I have my left foot in the direction I'm going to cast, so I'm going to have it straight. My right-hand foot is set parallel with the beach. So in that way, I'm going to be stable on my feet. But if both my feet are together like that, I'm not stable. Or if both my feet are parallel with the beach, I'm not stable neither. So always have your stance right. So if you're right-handed, left foot facing the direction you're going to cast, right foot parallel with the beach. So hold your line, flick your bail arm over, hold the butt of your rod, and as you put your rod back, make sure you don't put your lead on the floor. Hopefully you can actually see me, hopefully I'm far enough. So drop the rod back, and before you cast, hold your arms nice and straight, and as you come through, push with your right hand and pull with your left. Always remember to pull, because you'll find a lot of people don't physically pull with their left, and that creates so much force in the cast to help propel the lead. So hold it, arms nice and straight, look up roughly 45 degrees and give it a good pull and let go. Don't worry about distance at all when you're first starting off. Distance is not a key. All you're worried about is the motion of the cast. Let's do that again. So you're going to hold it here, drop it down. So the more room you got between the time you stop pulling to the letting go on the rod, the more time you got to compress the rod to load up the rod and then cast a bit further. So the longer the drop, the higher your rod's going to be, if you can imagine. So as you pull through, let go about there, and then that is where you want it to be. So let's do it one more time. So hold there, look up 45 degrees, make sure you got your nice foot stand, 45 degrees up, and let go. And another mistake, well not another mistake, I haven't said the first one, but a mistake that a lot of people will make, I'd see it time and time and again, especially when I'm out guiding, is people will hold the rod to cast and they'll always look back, and they'll keep looking back until they let go, and then they look forward once they've let go, and they find it plummets into the sea or goes left or right. So drop back, hold your arms straight, always look up at 45 degrees, because a lot of time your lead will always go in the direction you look. So if you're looking back like that, and then as you go to cast, you're looking round, you're naturally going to look down, because it's hard to going to look up as you push up. So that's something to really bear in mind. So that's a little casting, little clip. Like I said, I'm not going to go into too much complication with that, because as a beginner you don't need to learn it. So yeah, that is that done, and that is the video pretty much all done. So I'm going to get that squid bait out on this, and then let's finish up the video with one last little thing I wanted to mention. Right, so we are starting to pack up now. I've got one rod reeled in, just packing the rig up now, as we are all done for this video. Unfortunately, we haven't caught anything, but the fishing at the minute is absolutely awful. It's very, very quiet. I wasn't even expecting to catch anything today. I've only been fishing for, I think I've been on the beach now for like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. I had one bite towards the start, but I was quite surprised to get a bite, let alone hooking a fish. So yeah, as much as I would like to have caught a fish, to show you guys a fish or two, it's not really the main purpose of the video. But the one thing I want to mention before we finish up is something that a lot of people get trapped into, and that's the online thing. So what I want to talk about is I'm not going to have a massive conversation about it, but just to give a quick mention about the massive importance in supporting your local tackle shops, because they're the shops that we all rely on, from needing £5 rag room to nip down Barry Dock after work for a couple hours, or asking to order a new rod or reel or some advice. But if we stop shopping at them, they are just going to disappear. And then there's very, very, very few online shops that you can actually phone and ask for solid advice for about the area. It really is. They're all sort of just some guy sat behind the computer on the phones, not really there to give you advice. He's just there to answer the phones. So, got the fish on then. Don't feel like it though. So yeah, the local tackle shops are without a doubt your best place to go for advice and tackle. Even if they don't stock what you want, they can order it in, and they're much more highly likely to price match than the online shops. So so for example, here in Barry, you got Halton Road Angling, run by Daniel Crump, and I couldn't recommend a better shop, to be honest. I don't want to upset other tackle shops by saying this. I know it probably will, but I'm not saying this. I'm not saying it because he's one of my closest mates. I'm saying it as a fact. I really don't think there's anyone that you could ask for better advice for. There's very few people I fish with that have got the knowledge that he has on his ground or away fishing. Like, I've been fishing away with him, and he's a kind of person that would put his hands to any kind of fishing and pick it up quite quick. And someone like that is so vital for a beginner, because he's going to give you the advice that you need. And a lot of the local tackle shops will put line on your, say you go to him now, say you go to Halton Road Angling, and you say, like, I want to buy a rod and reel, quite highly likely to probably do you a bit of a discount, but not even just that, or not even a discount, maybe a matching price, but he'd very highly likely put the line on the reels for you. Right, I'd say highly likely he would. I was in there the other day and he'd done it for someone. And you ain't going to get those online shops doing that. They're not going to give you the support you need as a beginner. So always remember to support your local tackle shops, as they're the guys that you're going to rely on for those last little minute sessions, a bit of bait, that those online shops ain't going to support you on. So, so yeah, we are all done for this video. So I'm all packed up now, ready to head back to work and continue my day. Got to do some work on some machines now. So yeah, I really hope you have found this video useful for your fishing. If you have, I'd really appreciate if you hit that subscription button and follow for more, because there is a few more of these kind of videos coming. If you do want to book up a coaching session with me where we can really go in depth of a few things, help you with your casting a bit more, rigs, anything really, we can always go through it on the beach. So contact me through my website for that. I've got a bit of information on there. So yeah, I'm more than happy answering any questions if you want to message me. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as usual, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.